Welcome to this week's episode on the $100 GPW Jeep. As you can see, we got the engine out. Lexi pulled this yesterday. We've got some footage of that. I will show you in a minute. The reason it's in our shop and not in the dumpster is because I went through the comments and I would say a majority of people wanted to see the inside of this engine and see how bad that frost damage is. And to be honest, I'm curious myself. I still don't believe that this engine can be saved. I mean, technically, yes, I think we could sleeve it. I don't think it'd last though, and you know, what is the point of making an engine that doesn't last? But I could be wrong. And I am very curious to see just how bad the damage is, because I don't think I've seen frost damage as bad as this ever. So we're going to tear into this, but first you can see a time lapse of Lexi pulling that engine out, and then we're going to get right into the teardown. We went with a time lapse on this just because pulling engines is not the most fantastically interesting thing in the world. There's a lot of fiddly bolts that just take a while to get to by hand. And there's not much that goes on. I mean, on something as simple as this, you just remove in the bell housing bolts, the ones on the engine mounts, any accessories in the exhaust, and then you support it, take its weight, take the last couple of bolts out, and then it will just pull and come clear. Lexi's just removing the very last bolt, and we think we can pull this Jeep engine straight out.
Okay.
Right, you guide it. Are we caught on anything? Wash your fingers. Do you want me back or forwards? Forwards, okay. Say when.
Okay, up.
Oh, okay.
Whoa. Forwards. Up.
Anna. And here we have it.
There we go.
The F-head engine is out.
Yay.
So we're going to take this into the shop, we're going to tear it down, and we're going to see exactly how bad this carnage is inside this thing. I like, particularly, which you're not going to be able to see on that camera, the cobwebs on the clutch. Fantastic.
Very nice.
They are nice. And
the bent exhaust.
yeah, there's...
It didn't come off where I unbolted it either.
Oh yeah. Oh well. It's not like we ever reuse them.
No.
And rear main seal was leaking, that much we do know.
Oh yeah.
Not a massive shock. I wouldn't have thought that clutch would have been doing a lot with that amount of oil on it. Okay, see you in the shop. Okay, let the teardown begin. We, first of all, I need to make sure this chain's off. There we go. And I want to put another tray down on the front of this because they always drop way more stuff. All these are bigger than that. And I love the fact that the airline has suddenly decided to start making a loud hissing noise where it hasn't ever done that before. But of course I've turned the camera on, so yeah, that's just the way that life works. And I know you've seen me do this before. because we, well, let's be honest, we didn't take the head off, did we? We attempted to take the head off very crudely with a fork truck, but, and that's, in all honesty, not how we roll normally, but I had to get Lexi to bolt it back on so that we could safely pull it out. Aha. I was about to say, and of course she wouldn't have done the one that's inside the water jacket, but no, it's not even a water jacket, is it? Let's be fair. It is, of course, the air intake, but she has done it, which I'm pretty impressed about. And there we go. Okay, is that all of those? I do believe it is. I will be wrong about this, I always am. No, we're good. Come on. Now, this would normally come off really easily. Unfortunately, some idiot with an excavator yanked on this and lifted it up and has bent all the rear studs. Now, we don't know who that was, but clearly they've made this part of it a lot harder. You can't really leave her here because don't make me put a porta power in there. Okay, right. As quite a few of you said that I should have put 2 nuts on this to bring it out. Let's see how well that goes. Actually, we're not going to use 2 nuts. We are going to use a stud extractor. And I'm guessing we'll use the wrong size stud extractor first off. Let me just check. I'm going to take 2 with me, and a nice big ratchet. This is a little Goldilocks. Yes, we have a winner. We have a 3/8 ratchet, and we have a 1/2 inch socket. So, what do we think? Well, you were all right. It comes out really easily, and clearly I'm an idiot, so because that's what I should have done right at the start of that video, isn't it? Ah, well, you live and learn. All right, let me just break that back. Which it hasn't done, but I don't mind, I'll come back to that later. Right, let's see if we are any easier now. I wouldn't say it is noticeably. Why is it sticking? I will be back in a second. I just need to, these metric? No. I just need to put this in a vise and give it a little slap. What is surprising though, is all that silliness with the excavator didn't actually bend the studs. So whatever it's catching up on wasn't that. This stud to me looks off centre though. I don't know what I did to that stud, but I mean, we were raunching about with it, picking the Jeep up. I mean, who's to say what got bent with what? It wasn't exactly a sensible way of doing it. All right, now, hang on. There we are. Free her up a little bit. And I don't have, oh maybe I don't think I have a 1/2 inch air ratchet, so I think that will 3/4 inch. That one's bent, fair play, that one is really bent. Maybe that's what was holding us up. Yes. Okay. Okay. I mean, apart from the rust, it doesn't look too terrible, does it? Yeah, I think that's pretty good. So while we're in close-up mode, what can we see down here? Do you know the slightly depressing thing is that these bores are not that bad. I mean, with the obvious exception of that. And this is, I mean, that's pretty special, isn't it? Okay, let's dig deeper, see what else we can find. Okay, next I'm going to pull this exhaust off. And once we've done that, I will get the accessories off. Okay. Isn't that pretty? Next up, fan. Next off, the generator. It's been amazingly badly installed with a million spacing washers. So it's probably going to try and drop on my foot. The back of it isn't even actually held in. Are you kidding me right now? Oh. There we go. Awesome. So that is going to need a wrench, one of these two. This is weirdly tight, bearing in mind that you can do that, so I'm guessing it's been cross-threaded or something. Or somebody's used a metric bolt. The old force it home technique. All these fastenings are going. I'm not keeping them around because I know they're not original and factory, and I know that if they just lie around here, they will not get used because we always put new fastenings back on stuff. Unless it's something that has to be period correct and then we go over the older fastenings. But either way, they are not a thing. Ew. Doesn't smell any different to the last time I smelled it. Okay, let's take this fuel pipe off the pump. It's already been undone, which I'm exceedingly happy about. I don't care, we're not going to keep it, but it would be nice not to damage the fittings taking it out. Oh, no, it hasn't been undone. This has dropped down from the top. Okay, so that's too big, and I'm not going to use this type of wrench on this anyway. Yeah, okay. Oh no, it worked. So 9 times out of 10, when you use a standard wrench on pipes and fittings, especially brake lines, you are going to end up just twisting and shearing them off. They'll just round out the nut, especially anything that's brass. So if you're ever working on something like that, it is worth getting yourself a set. I'll get a bigger one because you see it on the camera easier. Get yourself a set of wrenches like this. I'm sure you can buy them, you know, in any of the places. And with these, you can get round and you can take any of those brass pipe nuts off and not round them off. This, as it happens, was completely loose, so it doesn't matter. Okay, let's see what fun things we find under the valve cover. Okay. This is plastic. Never use metal for anything like this. You'll end up scratching all the surfaces up. And even as it stands, I feel like I'm going to end up bending this. It is attached. There we go. Perfect. Doesn't look too frightening. Has plenty of oil in it, which I don't think is going to be a surprise to anyone that saw me pouring oil into this on the first one. I mean, that looks, again, pretty good. I feel like if the frost hadn't got to this, if it hadn't got water in it, this would have been a really nice engine. One of the things that I really liked about this engine is that where it says FR there on the serial number, that means it was a factory replacement. And that was pretty cool. It meant that there was a part number for it, and then you could just literally go to Willys and order this engine, and it would turn up as a crate engine, and you could put it in your Jeep. And I thought that was really neat. So that was one of the reasons I was particularly gutted when I found all that damage in there. So I'm going to try and get the water pump off. Well, I throw rags on the floor. And I need I can't get an impact in here. Oh, I don't think so easily, so I'll be using the old manual impact technique. This is very much one of those bolts where I wish I'd have just taken the 3 seconds to wander over to the other toolbox and get a chrome with a wobbler and put it on a ratchet, a battery ratchet, and it would have come out pretty quick. But I decided I didn't want to do that because I thought it would take too long while we're filming and you don't need to see me going to the toolbox all the time. And yeah, this was definitely the quicker option, wasn't it? Okay. Water pump impeller, pretty good condition. Bearings are okay. Pump's okay. That's a good pump. So if nothing else, we've come out of it a water pump richer. Nothing too scary on there. Not a surprise it hasn't got any coolant in it, because I'm pretty convinced that the coolant all disappeared at that point. So now I feel like it would be a good idea to turn this over, get the oil pan off, and see how bad it is under there. There could be some pretty exciting stuff there. And I remember from the comments, one of you was saying that we weren't getting any oil into the cylinders when we were pouring it in through that funnel. And it was all just going out through the exhaust ports. Well, it was, in fairness, going out through one of these exhaust ports, but this still got a lot of oil in it, just because of the sheer quantity I was pushing in. But there was only one exhaust port open at that moment. It's interesting that this is still sticking up though, isn't it? So that is probably quite stuck. All right, let's turn this over. So, the thing about this engine stand is this isn't actually one of our engine stands. A customer has very kindly lent it to me to do this with, because all our stands are taken up with customers' engines, and we're rebuilding what that should actually have, an L134 engine for him. And it's a really nice block actually, it's going to be a good engine. But his block is in the hot tank right now, so it doesn't need to be on a stand, and this was already set up with the right spacing for this, so I asked if I could use it just for this. But a fun thing about this engine stand, unlike our gear ones, is I don't know where the rod is for it, because it didn't come in with the engine, so we have to turn it around with this bar. So this will look pretty sketchy. I will be amazed if lots of fluids don't pour out at this point. Yeah. Case in point. Be honest, I wasn't expecting quite that much. And I don't know why, because if you remember, you know, a minute ago on this video, I checked the dipstick, didn't I? And it was over oil. And I didn't drain it, no. No, I didn't drain it. Oh dear. One of those I should really have known better moments. It's amazing how much more you mess up on simple things when the camera is rolling. Just things you wouldn't normally ever do, you know, you just take your time and you go through and you have an order for doing everything. And then as soon as you turn the camera on, everything changes. You just turn into an absolute imbecile. And this would be a perfect example of that. And I'm really OCD about my shop. So I'm not in love with the oil pan, so I am going to clean this up. I'm going to turn the camera off while I clean it up, and then we will come back. Just so that you can see the full devastating effect of my stupidity. Isn't that amazing? Just awesome. Right, that's that all cleaned up. And to be honest, I think I've done a pretty good job. I think I'm going to get away with that. I would appreciate it if you folks didn't tell Lexi. I think we should keep this between us, because I think she's going to watch this video and she will absolutely use this opportunity to make fun of me. So if we could just be, you know, discreet. And I think a bit of careful editing, no one will ever know. It's all good. Nailed it. Okay, now on with the oil pan, which I am confident will contain no oil. I am absolutely certain at this stage that it is an oil-free zone. Unlike my floor, which definitely did not have any oil spill on it. Okay, all the bolts are undone. Sometimes you can, with oil pans, you can end up bending them really easily if you lever them, and it's not a huge list of deals. You straighten them out again. We always powder coat them, and that gives us an opportunity to do a lot of repairs. When you go to put an oil pan back on though on one of these old engines, you'll notice invariably that somebody has over tightened the bolts. They'd had a leak and they thought, oh, I know exactly what will fix that. I'll just... And what they do is they crush this and they make little dimples in it. And when you get this off, you'll see those little lumps. In fact, if I get it off, maybe I can show you. But if I just hit, even with a dead blow, if I just hit in on here, I will dent it. So I'm using the skid plate, I'm using the strongest parts of it, just to loosen it up a little bit. Because I am concerned oh, that does not want to come off. Okay, so plastic again. You can get these from Hazard Fraught, by the way, and you know what that place is like. They're probably like $3 for 100 of them or something. I don't know, but we use the heck out of them, and then you can just sharpen them up on a belt sander when they get damaged and broken, which this feels like it's about to be. And the corner is the strongest part, so you want to come in at the corners and don't lever. You're going to be tempted to put something under there and lever. Do not do it. The thickness of this is more than enough to separate what you need to do. And you don't have to do it all from one corner. Get one bit a little bit loose. Go in from the other side. And you'll get it to free up a little bit. And now we're going to go in from the front corner. Same deal. You see how it's getting easier on every one. And then this last corner, I mean, it's basically up at this point. There we are. And the key thing about this now is we haven't bent the oil pan, which in an engine that if you're rebuilding, is a pretty good thing. Now, you will see here, if I come into the camera, these here is where you're going to find it dimpled up. So we use body hammers. You can see another one there. You will always end up with a leak if you don't flatten those out. So put something underneath it, like a strong piece of metal to use as an anvil, and then just knock these down flat, and you'll get a way, way better seal. And obviously, always use a torque wrench whenever you tie up oil pan bolts. Now, this is one of those things where I will switch to the other camera for a better view. Or will I? Yes. Yes, I will. So in here is pretty special. There is a significant amount of sand and debris. Well, actually, nothing's sharp yet on the glove, so mainly sand. Makes you wonder where all the metal's gone, doesn't it? I mean, I see worse oil pans every day, but the pickup isn't terrible. Let's have a good close-up view of this now. Now, a neat thing about these old Jeep engines that I've always liked is their oil pickup is on a hinge and it floats, so that when you're going at extreme angles, you don't get oil starvation. That's a pretty cool design, isn't it? But other than that, nothing too horrific. Bit of water there. Ah, looks okay. All right, next we are going to pull off the oil pickup with its cool floaty design, and we are going to remove the pistons, see what condition they're in, see what condition the rings are in. And I'm not confident this is the right size socket, but we will find out. Look at that. And no. So we're on the 1/2 inch. That was disturbingly loose. You really don't want a loose oil pickup. And yet, whenever you put those on, I mean, with anything that's going on a car, they vibrate. Use thread locker. Thread locker is not expensive compared to a new engine. But the trick with thread locker and engines is you need surface intolerant. Permatex make a good one, Loctite make a good one. I think it is 243 maybe for the Loctite. I can't remember the Permatex part number, but I probably have some here. The key part is the surface intolerant stuff. It just means that it will work if there's a little bit of oil there. And a lot of the time when you're assembling an engine, you're using brand new engine oil as lube, and it can get into places. And that can stop your thread locker working. And another thing that people don't really realize about thread locker is it only really works with ferrous metals. So if you're using it with aluminum, not an issue here, but you need to use an activator or it won't actually go off. So just things to think about. Okay. It's kind of grabby. And now we need to turn over the engine so that I can get to the pistons. Nice things about these cranks is you can usually pull all 4 pistons with only 2 rotations. I'm going to use that and that. And what I am aiming for here is, well, I don't know why I was so desperate to. That would be more of that oil that I definitely did drain first before turning the engine upside down. Nobody knows how it got in there. It's a complete mystery. This is going to really bite me as well, because whenever I put one of these pistons through, it is going to be full of oil, and I've just realized I will be dropping it into a bath of oil. So this is the gift that keeps on giving. I'm probably not going to make that mistake ever again. I can't believe I just made it then. But yeah, this one's going to stick with me. Oh. Interesting. So the locks on these are slightly different design. They're open at one end, which I think, from memory, means that they are not OEM. It means someone's been in here. Unless, of course, they did use an open lock on these at some point, and if you know about that, please let me know in the comments. But I personally have not seen the open locks on this style on OEM. Ow. Tell you what, I don't think they lock the nuts on particularly effectively, but they are fantastically good at sticking in your socket. I think they're world champions at that. Now, something else I always do whenever I strip an engine which I'm not going to do this particular time because of the camera and the time constraints and yada yada, is I always number the pistons as they come out. I engrave it on the rods and I engrave it on the top of the piston, and I generally put the direction of travel towards the front, which most pistons are marked with, but I like to have it on there because sometimes you find out that the previous guy has built it wrong. And then if you find out that when you've cleaned the pistons up and notice that the mark is in the wrong way, because these are offset, you won't see from this angle, but it's smaller on this side than it is on that. You can get these the wrong way around. And when people do stuff like that, it can cause problems. It can go into the piston wall and that kind of thing. So you want to be aware of it if somebody's messed up like that. So whenever you're knocking these out, you only ever use brass. And I am going to try super hard not to drop this piston into this oil bath, because that would suck. It's so full of oil. I can see it down in here. I genuinely have no idea how I'm going to do this without really messing up. I do know though that my hand needs to be underneath it. Oof. Okay, so this now is just sitting on the dirt on the top of the bore. And the rings will always sit here at this point. Now, a lot of people are going to tell you that you need to use a reamer up in the top to just ream that ridge reamer just to take it out. We have seen more engines destroyed with ridge reamers than anything else. I had a customer bring a really nice engine in it, no other damage, and they'd ridge reamed the top of it just so he could get his pistons out, because that's what they tell you to do a lot of the time. And he'd reamed that so far that when we come to bore it, we had to bore it 60 thou over to save the bores. If he hadn't ridge reamed it, we could probably have taken it 10, 20. That was the last time that engine would ever be bored without being sleeved. And it's so easy to mess up with a ridge reamer, and who cares if you break a ring knocking it out? Nobody in their right mind is putting rings, used rings, back in an engine when they rebuild them. So it is way better to, not that I've ever broken a ring this way, but it's way better to sacrifice the rings and push them out this way and not ridge ream than it is to mess about with those hateful ridge reamers. They are just a nightmare. Yeah, I need to get a bit of leather in here because this brass is bouncing off the crank. Somebody has moved my leather. That's fine. Just gonna move over a little bit. I just don't want this. This is softer than the crank, that's why I'm using it. Ooh, that change in tone means I need to pay attention. Now you're going to be watching this and thinking, he's really hitting that hard. And I'm not, it's a really gentle tap. It's just echoing through here. It's a big building and it just echoes like crazy. These are really light taps. I could be tapping my finger right now and not hurting it. And that's why it's not going very far. And it's bringing the head gasket with it, which also I should have taken off earlier. Probably just after I drain the oil, maybe? You know, around that time. So. Okay. Now, operation remove piston without covering myself and my shop in oil. There we go. Let's just see what we dropped. No, just the bearing. Right. Let's see. Now the bearings are the first thing really that's going to give us an idea how badly this thing was abused, if at all, before that winter. I almost Do you know, I kind of wanted to see bad bearings. I need to push my glasses up, and I don't know I'm going to do it because my hands are covered in oil. So there's two things we gain from bearings. Usually they will have a size and sometimes a date stamp on them. And it'll be come through. Depends on the era. These are Federal Mogul, and they say 0.20. So we know that this has been ground. So they're 20 under. So it's another thing that points to it being a rebuild. Although some of this early stuff, they used to grind them in the factory sometimes, so it doesn't mean a great deal. But the other thing that the bearing will tell you is a lot about the engine condition. And actually this one, it's really good. Really, really good. Yeah, the other one's got a slight mark in it, but it's very new. It probably happened when I unseized the engine. Even the crank is pretty good. This is not what I was expecting at all. I was really expecting this to be every type of horrible. So let's keep going. The piston itself, I was going to leave it to drain some oil out here, but there's no real damage to that. There's no scoring. It's just a piston that's in pretty good condition. So again, this is showing that this engine was actually really good until that blew out. If I could remember where I put my impact, we can get the next one off. They do little socks for these. You can use a little bit of old fuel pipe. You can use all sorts of fun things. A lot of the time. I always use these when I'm putting them in. And quite often use them when I'm taking them out. There's a lot less risk when you're taking it out because you can actually hold it away from the crank with this. And this is, I make these on the lathe. They're nothing more than a brass bar with a hole in it on that side and a slight chamfer. It's not some technical thing. This drawer, these people need to really get their act together on drawers, I'm telling you. That drawer drives me crazy. Again, just something in there. I have a big piece of leather I use for this. Oh, Scotch-Brite isn't really the one, but it will work. When you hear that tone change, it's about to go thunk. There we go. Good grief. Again, no real significant scoring on the piston. Skirts seem fine. Rings all move. That is going to be a very different story when we get to the cylinder number 2, the really bad one. I'd be pretty shocked if those rings aren't really, really mullered up. All right, so this is going to be our second crank position. I love how I just managed to make this so hard for myself. You think how many engines I strip a week? Never done that. Never done that. Have a camera on? Yep. Absolutely. We, a lot of the time when an engine comes in, and of course it's not one of ours, so it's a customer's engine and we don't really know the history, we drain the oil to test it. It's a big part of the first stage of what we do. So we drain all the oil out and we go through it and we check it for shavings, and then we'll take the oil filter off and then we cut the oil filter open and look for contaminants in there. Now, unless I'm tripping, and you guys can tell me this for sure, I think I only took 3 lock washers off there, and I don't think that one had one. And that's why I don't particularly like these lock washers. They just end up falling off and ending up in your oil pan. It was a good idea. They're not as bad as split washers, which are the devil, but they are pretty bad. Just for reference, if you've ever been labouring under the misapprehension that slip washers will stop and not vibrating off, they actually are worse for it. And there's a really interesting NASA article about it that's worth tracking down and reading up. You are way better using a thread locker than you ever are those horrible split washers. They do have a use, but it's to do with expansion through heat. As far as vibration goes, nightmare, don't use them. The test that NASA did, when you read through it, when they put the split washer on, it made it more likely to vibrate and come loose. They're useless. So that one's a bad one. I just had to think about that because we're upside down. So I'm going to take the next good one out. That will happen sometimes. Not often, but it will happen. Again, another really good bearing. I'm not convinced this actually had that many miles on it when it got killed. All right. Well, I don't have to put a sleeve on that other stud, so we're going to take that as a win. Take this down. Put that in. Slightly disturbed by the fact the tone isn't changing. Oh, I haven't come out the top yet, that's right. The funky noise was the GoPro going off. I think it's run out of battery, so that's fine. As long as the main camera's still back on. Yep. Yeah, that's just, everything's normal here. It's definitely not draining oil. No, I'm just pausing for a rest. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, rest. There we go. Okay, again, rings are good, skirt's good. Nothing to see there on the piston front. This one's going to be different. Again, these are not in super tight. So even on this one, even on number 2, the cylinder of death, bearings are mint. You would get another 100,000 of those bearings in a heartbeat. I am expecting this part of the process to be less smooth. If it doesn't catch on something, we could be okay. But I can't help remember that big hole. Just going to bring that down a little bit more. Oh, this does not feel good. So the others, I was tapping really lightly. Not so much with this one. This one I'm actually giving it some welly. And oh. It is not happy. What worries me about this is it's going to come out at speed. Into a big tank of oil. Oh. Well, there's no way the piston isn't completely scrap. There is no way that the bore isn't scrap. You know how I had 2 piston bolts? Yeah, not anymore. One just fell out. So my tried and tested method for getting these out is failing me. But I'm gonna be honest, I'm freaking out about that coming out and just splashing into that oil again, and me having a very unfun 15 minutes cleaning up again, which again didn't happen. But there we go. Now we have a springboard. It's going to come out, it's going to land on that. Everything's going to be perfect. It's not at all going to land on that and then just squirge oil everywhere. No, because that would be unlucky. We're going to swap over to an aluminum, whatever you want to call it, one. I'm bilingual, I don't mind. I'm not on the piston rod, not that it matters because we're not saving it, but I'm actually sat on the old bearing, which we wouldn't reuse anyway, and this being aluminum, it's softer still. That noise there was the bearing. So now I am on the piston rod, but again, do not care. Oh, I'm not even sure it's moved, you know? Why am I putting that on there? That's not helping anything. I don't care about that. I only care about the crank. Well, this is not ideal. I think we're going to have to up the ante. I think I might have a hammer in one of these. Yes. Okay. Okay, all bets are off. I don't know what to tell you, but it's not coming out. And if it's not coming out with this, I mean, yeah, I could put an air hammer on or something, but I've never had to put an air hammer on the inside of an engine. I don't intend to start now. All right, I am going to turn this over. I'm not in love with the amount of oil that is all over everywhere. But I'm going to turn this over again and see if we can take that down without damaging the... Let's come this way. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, why didn't I move my rubber cushion mat? Because that's what I'm thinking. So you can see the piston. The rings are just about to come out, but there is no real substantial ring groove or anything on there, and that wouldn't stop it anyway. So we're gonna wipe the top of the piston, because YouTube or no, I'm not about to splurge this right across my shop. So I'm going to scrape it off. Okay. All sorts of fun things falling out. Boy, is that stuck. Now, you have to be careful when you do this, because what can happen is the piston rod can twist slightly and then come down, and you'll jam it into the side of your good crank and mess it all up. I'm a little way off that just at the moment, but it's something to bear in mind if you're ever stuck in this heinous situation. Okay, we got movement. So we're going to try and get around the top of this and see what we're stuck on. So there's obviously that crack which we knew about. There's no surprise there. There's that big hole in the cylinder wall. I'm not seeing anything at the top that should be giving us any cause for concern. The other thing I'm not seeing in here is any shiny metal. And shiny metal would be pretty unusual in this hole. And it means that there would be some contact from something like this, the rings. None of that is happening. Let's use our fancy protection device just to clean this up a little bit. There is legit no reason why this isn't leaving. So we're going back over and we are going to really give it a thumping this time. We are going to treat it like we just caught it stealing our jelly babies. Does America have jelly babies? Gummy bears. Let's go with gummy bears. I don't know. I might be officially American now, but I haven't quite got the hang of all of your candies. Okay, well, once more back down with this brass drift, and then we are going to do the thing that I said that I absolutely would never do. That thing, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Well, every so often, this gets a little bit of a burr on it, and I have to put it back into the lathe and just trim it up. Tomorrow is going to be one of those days. Ooh, things just happened. Oh yeah. See? Told you I wouldn't have to use the air hammer. Trained professional. Let's go back to the subtle stick. Although I'm not sure. I can't believe that didn't drop then. So close. I cannot work out why it hasn't fallen onto this sponge and covered me in oil. But the reason I've not got my hand underneath it is because I'm keeping the crank safe, which I care about. So, this piston, it's mint really. You look at it. Every single one of those rings is stuck in. That's the shiny bit that I was telling you about. So that's where we were sticking. The actual skirt's not too bad. It's not particularly scored. The top of it, the crown's not pitted. No play in the pin. Apart from the rings, this is actually not that bad. And you think how badly locked up this, oh dear, how badly locked up this engine was, and how long it took to free up, which was a ridiculous amount of time. And the piston's still okay. I mean, the piston rod is still okay. Even with me hitting it that hard to get it out, piston rod is still okay. I mean, if it was something that was super rare and I had to reuse it and we were gonna, you know, this happens with numbers matching engines and things like that, although that's not actually an issue with rods, but you get where I'm going. We can put it on a machine over there and we can straighten out the rods and then we can re-hone them. And you grind them at an angle so that when the bolts pull them in, the actual thing pulls in together. So when you come through to hone the hole out, you take it out to the factory size again. And then it just takes standard bearings and off you go. So even that would be technically savable. But here is the fun part. This is where we get to see the bore for the first time all the way down. You would think that this would get lighter the more bits we take off it. This doesn't seem to be the case. Okay, we're going to need a combination of things for this to work. We need light and another camera. Yeah, to the person in the comments that said I need to buy shop rags, I mean, really? I have plenty of shop rags. Some of YouTube comments are wild, but I have to say I really appreciate all you people commenting and taking time, especially the people that are giving me tips and telling me stuff. I've learned so much from everybody that watches these videos, and I cannot stress enough how grateful I am for those of you who have taken that extra effort to subscribe to the channel. It honestly means the world to us because, you know, like everyone on YouTube, you're trying to grow your channel, and we picked up 500 subscribers in the last 2 to 3 weeks. And that's massive for us. I can't even begin to tell you what a difference it makes. And you guys subscribing is the thing that allows us to take this amount of time out to make these videos. We are so slammed on engine rebuilding work. We're booked so many months in advance. Without you guys doing the subscribing and liking and commenting and things, we wouldn't be able to take the time out of that. It just wouldn't make sense to do it. And you are the people that are enabling us to do that. So I thank you from the bottom of our heart. I really do appreciate you guys that are subscribing and liking and doing the comments. It makes the world a difference. Right, enough babbling. Let's see what we can see. Somebody has used all my brake clean. Probably, I don't know, this is just a guess, probably like cleaning up a spill that shouldn't have happened. So you just can't get the staff. Light. Okay, back in a sec. Okay, I mean, this is arguably the most important shot of the video, isn't it? You think I would be able to manage it? So that's the damage. That right there is where that water came in through the open valve, because that's just where it was sitting on that cycle, and it filled this cylinder up with water, and then winter came along and it just blew that out. Now, what I can tell you as a machinist is I still have meat at the top of this cylinder. I'm going to show you the other cylinders, by the way, which are pretty fantastic. I'm going to measure these for you right now, and we'll be certain Okay. We don't use this thing for measuring cylinders in any proper way. They're not really accurate enough. Nothing against who made the gauge or anything. It's just that type of gauge is not fantastic for any kind of precision work. But what they are good for is this type of thing where you just kind of need to know within a thou of, is it good? Now, when I was talking about the ridge reamers, all I'm doing is that little ridge at the top that people enthusiastically ream off for no reason. It's just carbon buildup in this particular case. There's no significant wear here, and I'll be able to tell you in a second exactly how much wear there is or is not. And a little bit of Scotch-Brite and brake clean. I prefer the non-chlorinated for most things because I tend to do a bit of welding, and you do not want to be using chlorinated brake clean on anything that you're going to weld. You would hope that you're not welding cylinder wall. All right. Okay, so I've cleaned that up. I've got shiny metal. I can see a slight wear edge now. I've got it clean. And I do need to have relatively clean hands for this because of the tool I'm using to measure. I know that seems to offend some of you for some reason. I don't know why, but sometimes you have to have clean hands. Right, now. There isn't a combination of gauges that fits this. There isn't. It's too big. So the only way I could measure this now would be with the Mitatoya, and I'm not sticking that in here. It ain't happening. Those things are just too spendy. So I can very unscientifically tell you, just by looking, which is not a way that you can ever gauge anything, but I can feel here, and just through experience, I can tell you that there is around half a thou to a thou wear on this top end. Because I've got the brake clean in there, it's really, really shiny. And if I close one eye and move my head around, and this isn't science, by the way, this is just guesstimation, but I can tell you that the cylinders aren't particularly egged out. You can usually see that, and you get a feel for it after you've bored and honed, you know, a couple of hundred engines. You get an idea of what the bad ones are before you clean them up. This, we could probably bore 10 over. That would be my guess without measuring. And it would clean up. And honestly, this tiny ridge at the top, you could just hone this and run it with new rings, and it would be A-OK with modern oils for at least 100,000 miles. This is more problematic, but I kind of think it might be interesting considering the rest of this engine is in such good condition. Maybe we should attempt to sleeve this, see if we can get it to last, put it in a project vehicle. I mean, obviously, we could never sell this engine, we could never give it to a customer, unless there's somebody out there that wants it for some reason. But there's too much risk involved as it stands. I'd want to put 30,000 miles on this engine before I knew that it was actually safe and good if we sleeved it. There is more meat at the top, as you can see in that video, than I thought there was. And we've got definitely enough at the bottom to seal. Assuming that there's no big cracks in this, maybe we can do it. It's not going to interfere with the build of the $100 GPW in any way. It won't slow that one down. If we do anything with this engine, it will just be for our own amusement. And we are still hunting for an L head at a sensible price. I have found a couple of them, but I can only assume they were made out of gold. I mean, the prices have been just horrific. And Jeep parts are really down right now. I mean, really down. So there's some very ambitious people trying to sell engine blocks right now. And I get offered a lot of these. I never used to be particularly interested in the L heads, because all my Jeeps have F heads in them, and I never had a flatty before. This is my first flat fender, which I mentioned in the first video. So I typically turn down L heads. You know, it's such a common upgrade for people to swap the L heads out and put an F head in, and they're the ones that I pick up and I buy and I hoard, and we redo them and we sell them done and things. But suddenly I'm an L head guy and I need to get an L head for this flat fender. So again, if you know of one cheap in the Montana area, let me know. I want to keep this build budget. We do high-end restorations on things. You know, I'm sure you've seen the Willys truck we got out of the 1960 and things, but that's not what this project's about. This project is trying to get what is a relatively rare military Jeep and get it working, running, driving, tidy it up, but not spend a complete fortune, because I kind of want it to be done the same way that anyone could do. You know, it needs to be something that people can do on a sensible budget. So I'm not just going to go out there and drop a $4,000 crate engine into it. It's not happening. It defeats the point of what we're doing with this Jeep. But anyway, I digress. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm sorry that it's not our usual sort of outdoor content and it's, you know, boring engine stuff and things. We will be back to our normal schedule programmed next week. We'll have something a bit more involving the Jeep out there. I do have another video that I'm hoping to drop this weekend on building an engine stand. It's a skid stand for big diesel engines. It's just a real quick way of doing it. It'll just be a showy. So if you're subscribed and you see that video pop up and you're not interested in how to make a very cheap engine stand, ignore that one. But like I say, we will be coming back with a lot more content on that Jeep and doing a little bit more. And we do have some leads on engines. So maybe we will be dropping an engine in next week, but it's most likely we'll be doing something else. So thank you very much for all your support, and we'll see you next week.